Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another video. Today's video is going to be kind of an interesting new video that I haven't done before, just an idea I had the other day, because I think a lot of people are disappointed with the patches. The changes aren't that big, all these different kinds of things. And there's some other minor things that people are frustrated about with how these changes are being made. So I decided that I'm just going to make a short video, and I'm going to try to redo the patch in a way that would make a little bit more sense, fix some of the things that I think are wrong with the patch. Now, I'm not going to go crazy and be like, what would I change about the game? What would I like? I would introduce map changes or this, that, and the other thing. Because then this kind of video, this kind of exercise or idea or fun little game, it would get kind of too crazy. Like I'd have to do too much stuff because there's so many things that anybody, that you, me, anyone that plays this game, there's so many different things that we could change. There's so many different things that we could do to the game to actually alter it, to make it different, all this kind of stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of set the boundaries of whatever they released in this patch, and I'm probably going to do these kind of videos going forward. Whatever they released in this patch, I'm going to kind of stick within the bounds of this patch, and I'm going to say, okay, they did all these things. This is what they changed. What did they actually need to do differently in this patch? And if there's something that they just forgot completely, that they didn't change at all, that really needed to be drastically done, then I will address that. But otherwise, I'm just kind of going to alter some of the things that they did do that I think make more sense. And then we'll just see if you guys or, the people that watch us in general think that these changes are better. This first one, I'm not going to do like crazy stuff, and I'm just going to do some changes that I think will make more sense overall. Because I think a lot of people have some issues with how the game is being patched at this point. So it's just kind of a fun exercise, something fun that I decided to do. It's just fun for myself, and then just to share it with you guys to see what you think. So in any case, let me know what you think after I go through all these changes. But let's just start off in the very beginning. The first change that I fixed, the first thing that I changed basically altogether about this patch was the Null Talisman thing. So in the past, it granted mana cost reduction, 4%. It was making Storm broken, all this kind of stuff. And then they changed it to, it was 3% max spell or max mana increase, which is just kind of, I don't know, that's boring. Like, that's dumb. I don't know why they decided to do this whole change with the Null Talisman anyway. I just say go back to 3% spell damage amp, which is what it was before, and then don't change the mana regen, keep it at 0.6, which is what it was before. Just like make Null Talisman what it was before. Like, why do we need to mess with it and do this weird stuff and add these weird mechanics? Like, these mechanics aren't interesting. Clearly this one was an experiment. It was broken, didn't really work. Let's just go back to the way it was. The mana increase, if anything, it's just going to be broken in a different way with like OD or something like that. Like, that's just kind of annoying. It's not really that useful. Let's just go back to the way it was. I think it was good that way. It helps, heroes that are intelligence heroes and spell heroes snowball in the early game. And that's kind of what this item is for. So I said just go back to the way it was originally. I do like experimenting, like how they're experimenting with different mechanics, but I just don't think this one worked out. Just go back to the way it was. So the next one is the healing salve. This was a pretty big change in this last patch, and I didn't mind it, but I think it was kind of halfway done. It was kind of pointless because basically they say that now the original change was now that if you use a healing salve on an ally, it does basically half healing because it lasts half as long. And that's kind of pointless because now nobody is ever going to use healing salves on anyone else. There's just no real reason to, because why would you waste that money? It's just really, really bad. The only real reason I can see for them doing that is the shovel. So the trusty shovel, I believe it is, spawns healing salves. And now I just said that the healing salve from the shovel belongs to the hero that picks it up off the ground. So you spawn it on the ground, and whoever picks it up, now it's theirs. So that kind of adds a little bit of skill. You have to like use the shovel at the right spot. You don't want the enemy to get it. You want your carry or whoever to get it instead of you if you do spawn one and they need healing, that kind of stuff. It just makes it a little bit more like there's some consideration there instead of just spawning it and then just giving it to them or whatever. And also just having it not cast on allies at all. That's my main change. That's the way that I fixed it, because I don't think if you're going to do it half, you might as well just do it completely, because what is the point? And then I think the cost decreasing that makes sense. That's a good change too. But then you can see this other little asterisk here that I put up about tangos, because basically tangos now, shared tangos last for about 20-30 seconds, something like that. It's long enough that you can give it to somebody in lane. They can kind of dilly-dally around, do whatever they want, and then eat the tango eventually. Like, it's no big deal. Now I said that I would change that to last for only 10 seconds. This way it makes it more deliberate. It's something that you actually have to consider. If you share it into their backpack, if they don't have an open slot, that's kind of annoying, because then they have to quickly switch something out and then, eat the tango before it disappears. That's kind of something that I think should be implemented, because now we're going to see 5 position supports by like 3 sets of tangos, like maybe even 4 over the course of the lane. And that's just going to be the switch now. It's going to go from healing salves to tangos. It's going to be pretty simple, straightforward in that way. But now with nerfing the duration of the shared tango before you have to eat it, just makes everything a little bit more deliberate. You have to really think about what you're doing and when you're doing it and where you're positioning and all these kinds of stuff, that you're near a tree, that you didn't put it in the backpack, etc., etc. So I think that would be a good change, because I think we're just going to see the meta shift to tangos, and then next patch or a few patches from now, we're going to see something change with tangos. So I just kind of preemptively did that. So that's healing salve. Next, we're going to go all the way down to Revenants Brooch. By the way, I think I saw somebody comment about the brooch. It's not actually brooch, it's just spelled this way, but it's brooch. So brooch is 2 words, one with an A, and that's like a word that means like you can like broach a subject, that kind of thing. And then this is also brooch, but it's just spelled that way, and it's like the pendant you wear on your like suit or whatever. But anyway, not to digress too much about that, but the point is I would just change this item completely. Like, this item is clearly not being bought. Nobody likes it. It's not good enough. I don't think any of these changes make this item viable in any way. It's just not a good item right now. I could be wrong about that, but I think they should just fundamentally change how it works. I think the idea of like having your attack damage become magical is good, but I think they just need to like rework the build up, or rework how the idea of it, or like how exactly it works, because just nobody's buying it right now. Something needs to change. So really change the item completely. Maybe not in the core concept, but just a lot of the functionality of the item. So I just thought that I didn't really come up with anything crazy, because I wanted to stick within the limits of what they're doing. I just think that these changes are kind of useless. Let's just make something different about it. Let's do something completely. I don't want to do like whole reworks in this, because that's like it just kind of feels, doing a whole kind of rework seems like it's not in the spirit of this exercise. So I just said, hey, why don't we just change that completely? Don't just like make these kind of minor changes, because that's not really going to help anything, I don't think, with this specific item. So that's Revenants Brooch. Now let's move on to Wraith Pact. Wraith Pact was the big item that was kind of the item of the major. Everyone was buying it every single game. I think it's basically still going to get bought like every single game, and that's largely because that damage reduction is just so good. Like, it's just something that you can't get by. Like, it's just so good to have that totem placed down in the fights, and you're doing, I think, 30% less damage. That's kind of crazy. But I did change the nerf a little bit here. I actually didn't nerf that aspect of it, because I thought that's like an interesting aspect. Some people don't like it, but it is still the thing. The reason that you're buying it is that. So now we're just going to change a bunch of the other aspects to make it weaker for this, weaker in all the other aspects, but still strong in that one specific thing, which is the reason you're buying it. So you still have the 30% damage reduction. You still have the model size increased by 50%, which was also here. But now instead of attacks to destroy reduced from 5 to 3, the actual patch was 5 to 4. I think 4 attacks is still too many. Like, it's still so annoying, especially for supports. Now having it be 3, I think that's a little bit more reasonable. It's 1 more than a ward. Juggernaut's healing ward is 1 attack. Like, that's a pretty significant thing. This thing is like as powerful as that. Maybe not as powerful, because obviously you're healing your team for a lot in an AoE, but this thing is still kind of insane. Like, you have to kill this thing in a fight if you want to win it, if you don't have your own running at the same time. So it's just one of these things. I think making it 3 attacks is better. I was even considering making it 2 attacks, to be honest, like a ward, so the support can get it, 2 supports they can both attack it, these kinds of things. I think it would be reasonable to go down to 2, but I just said 3 because that's kind of a happy medium. The gold bounty, I think, makes sense, but I also wanted to change something else about it, which is I wanted to no longer deal damage, because that's another thing too. The AoE now is a little bit bigger because they made it, fixed it. They made it actually what Vlad's aura is, but the fact that it deals DPS, it's not important in the sense that it's dealing a ton of damage. It's important in the sense that you place this down, you throw it into the enemy team. Not only can they not do damage, they can't blink initiate on you. So if you have it in the trees, if you have it in some weird spot, they can't get to it, and the AoE is just like pulsing out and you're taking damage, you literally can't blink. You can't get out with that blink. And I think that's really important. So just eliminating that aspect completely from the item, I think actually balances the item really well, because now you can still blink, you can still get out, you can still do a lot with it. Surrounding it, you can escape from the item itself, but if you do fight around it, if you do have it placed down in the fight, 30% damage reduction is a lot. So I think that would actually just fix the item a lot more. I really think that with the changes that they did make, I don't think this item is going to be nerfed. Like, the fact that it's 4 hits to kill it, and 50, like, this model size is just quality of life. the gold bounty's like fine, but are you really going to spend the time to kill it? Because there's only one attack less, and that's all they did to nerf this thing. I think this thing is just still going to be bought every single game. Every single pro game, you're still going to buy Wraithpact. Like, I just don't see how it's really nerfed that much. I think if you changed it to these things, it would at least have a consideration of, oh, will I buy this or not? I just think now it's still going to be bought every single game. So that's why I would change it at least like this. I would think I might even be too conservative on my changes here. I think I might even nerf this thing more because of, you know, how good it is. So now we can move on to the hero updates, and I basically just pick and chose some of the hero updates. I think ones like Alchemist, Bristleback Centaur, these were pretty good changes so far. And the first one I'm really going to adjust is the Chaos Knight change. So we can see here the old damage that they changed it to is in parentheses there. So the damage was reduced in the actual patch, basically at the early levels. So in the last levels, you can see there for the old patch, or the patch that actually happened, it was 150 to 300 in the past, and now in the new patch, it's still 150 to 300. And so the reason why I changed this is because I really don't think this is much of a nerf to the hero. I mean, yes, in lane, it's not going to be as good, but I think this hero still has a fine time laning with the lifesteal. I know they nerfed that a little bit, but still, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. It's still super tanky, very hard to deal with. I think this hero's still going to be relatively overpowered, especially because later on in the game, you're still getting the same damage out of the Chaos Bolt. So what I decided to do was I decided to take that reduction from level 1, which was 30 at the lower range and 60 at the higher range, and I decided to just apply that across the entire skill. So you can see there my actual change right here. Once it gets to the top, it's 120 to 240 instead of 150 to 300. And I think that's good enough of a change that even later in the game, this damage that you're doing from Chaos Bolt is just not enough, or not as much. So because the hero relies on bursting people down, you're just going to have a little bit of extra farm, a little bit of extra damage, a little bit extra to get those people, you know, to get those heroes deleted like you used to do, because that Chaos Bolt is not going to be doing as much damage. On the high end, it's going to be doing 60 less damage, which might not seem significant, but that could be like another attack or so. So, you know, that could be, what is that, like another attack or two from an illusion. So it's going to be significant a little bit, especially if you get that high range, and especially with the shard too, and you're just throwing out these Chaos Bolts. I think that is important. So I think that's a much better change, because I think with the way they changed this hero, and it was probably the most popular carry of the patch, it just doesn't seem like this hero is all that much worse. Yes, the laning stage is worse with the lifesteal nerfs and these kinds of things, but it's still going to be able to lifesteal just as much as always, in the sense that it's going to burst people down in the same way. The damage hasn't changed in max level, all that stuff. I just don't think it was good enough to actually make this hero that much worse. And so that's why I decided to have that as the first change for the heroes. And then the next one I'm going to change is actually Crystal Maiden. So I did a few of these fixes. Basically, I did some like actual changes, and then I just did a few fixes. So CM is one of the fixes. Basically, they buffed the hero, but they just nerfed the strength gain by 1. So it went from 18 to 7, or actually not the strength gain, the base strength by 1. And I'm just like, no, don't do that. So I just said, instead of doing that, just buff it by 1. Because you're buffing the hero in general, just buff it by 1. Why are you reducing it by 1? And I think people have said that this hero now has like less HP to start than like a melee creep or something like that. It makes no sense why they would even do that. So they're buffing it here, but then they're nerfing the strength. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. So I fixed that. I'm at least buffed it, or, you know, at the very least, just don't change it. Why even do that? Very annoying. Same thing with Dawnbreaker here. They decreased the strength growth of this hero from 3.6 to 3.2, but then buffed it over here. Stop doing that. Just keep it the same. Don't like nerf one thing and then buff another. It makes literally no sense to do that. Stop doing that. So I just said don't change that at all, and then just keep those buffs in there. And the same thing goes for the next change, which is basically Ember Spirit. Instead of, you know, nerfing the base strength buffing the base strength by 1, which doesn't really do much, and then nerfing the Sleight of Fist, just keep it the same and nerf the Sleight of Fist, like no big deal. I think all the other changes that I've kind of been skipping over are perfectly fine. But it's just these weird changes that's just like, I'm just fixing it because it's just pointless. It makes me so mad. I know it's not a big deal, but it goes to show that whoever's doing it just isn't thinking about what they're doing. They're just kind of arbitrarily putting changes in there just to put changes in there. So those 3 are kind of just small fixes. And the next one we're going to go to, it's actually pretty significant, and that is Keeper of the Light. So the old damage change that they did, it was kind of similar to the Chaos Knight, where if you look in the parentheses as the old change is what they did, basically they took it at from the early level of doing 200 damage to 185, but then at max level it still does 500 damage. So this really doesn't change the hero in terms of like the hero going mid. It changes it as a support a little bit, but that doesn't really matter that much because, you know, eventually you're going to be maxing out Illuminate anyway to clear waves and to do damage. So eventually you're going to get it to level 4 and then it does the same amount of damage. So what I decided to do is just nerf it by 20 at each level, which I think is plenty enough. I think that's definitely fine. I don't see why that would be a problem. You know, I nerfed it at level 1 a little bit more than even they did, and then at the max level it just does 20 less damage. In my patch, I actually did the change to the Null Talisman, which has now Spell Amp like it used to, so you know, that might just help the hero even so. I might even need to nerf Illuminate even more, but I just don't understand why you would make this kind of early game change. Just nerf the thing overall, because the hero late game is just so annoying. Like, now that didn't get changed at all. The hero really wasn't nerfed all that much. Maybe the laning stage a little bit, but that doesn't honestly even matter, because 15 damage, like, who really cares, honestly, level 1? It just doesn't matter at all. The hero isn't, like, killing you level 1 anyway with this Illuminate. Like, it's not doing that much. It just seems like a pointless change, so I decided to change that there. And then the next one is going to be Lena. So if you've seen my patches or, you know, heard what I had to say in Discord or anything like that, I'm really mad because I used to like playing Lena mid. I've been mad since they changed how Fiery Soul worked, because I understand what they're trying to do with it, but it just doesn't make any sense, because now to push towers, I think I was mentioning this in the other patch, to push towers and stuff, you have to like go to creep camps and like slave them really quick. It's just so awkward and weird. It's even more awkward than just randomly casting a spell from base. Like, it's just so awkward. You also can't gank people at all. Like, you just can't gank with the Shadow Blade or anything. You just can't do it anymore because, you know, you cast 3 spells on one target, but you barely get any attack speed. You don't even get half the soul stacks from doing that, because now it's max 7 and you only get 3 from casting those spells if you just hit that guy. So he has to be standing near creep wave or near other heroes. It's just very weird, annoying. It's annoying to gank. It's annoying to push towers. It's just super annoying. So I decided, instead of changing the duration from 15 to 18, which was a good, like a step in the right direction, I think, I just went all the way to 25. I was even debating going all the way to 30, because that way, when you get it to 25 to 30, you're about, you know, 1 creep wave. You can kind of keep up your stacks with every creep wave. So now pushing it's not as big of a deal when you're pushing that you're going to lose your stacks. Like, you don't have to run to a creep wave. I think I might even make it more than 25 just because of that, because 5 seconds still is kind of enough that you might lose your stacks, but at least you can kind of run up, hit the creeps. It sort of makes sense, you know, from cast range, these kinds of things, that sort of makes sense. You're still not going to be able to gank, but now you can have your Fiery Soul stacks stay kind of kept up, and you still have them to push towers. So at least that is fixed a little bit. I think that makes sense to do it that way. She might be too good in lane now, but who knows? I don't care. Just fix that later, because the hero's completely dead. It's terrible right now in the way that it is. So I think 25 seconds is actually way better for how the hero works. Then the next one we're going to go to is everybody's favorite, Pudge. So Pudge here, I like the strength increase, or the damage increase rather, and then the flesh heap, they just buffed it a little bit, but the main buff that I introduced was kind of a second flesh heap buff here with the little asterisks there. Hero death range increased from 450 to 1600, same as hook range. So basically, with the way flesh heap works to get stacks, if you kill somebody, the range is 1600. I believe that's because it's the same as hook. So basically, if you hook somebody at max range and you kill them, you still get the flesh heap stack. But if you don't kill them, if you're just assisting or they're just in the AoE, it's 450, which is pretty close. You have to almost be standing on top of them. So I decided, hey, everyone loves Pudge. This isn't like a crazy damage buff. This isn't a crazy, like, laning buff. Like, the hero's still going to be bad in all the ways. The Pudge is bad, but now you just scale a little better because you keep getting more flesh heap stacks. And they already nerfed flesh heap anyway, the strength that you get from the stacks in the first place. So just make the range bigger. Like, just, it's quality of life. You just have to be in the fight. You just have to be assisting and like team fighting all the time, and then you get the stacks, and that'll work. And I think, I just don't even think this would be overpowered. Just do this. Just make it 1600 every time. That way when you're in a team fight and you win a team fight and everybody dies, you get the stacks. You know, maybe you're gonna have to nerf it eventually, but everybody loves Pudge. I think this would be a good enough nerf, or a good enough buff to actually make the hero a little bit more viable and just better overall. So anyway, that's Pudge, and the next one is actually Pugna. So The Pugna change was all surrounding Nether Ward, and I kind of kept it that way. If you don't know, the main reason that this hero became really good was because they actually added this damage reduction aura to the Nether Ward, which it didn't have before. And at 25%, that's a lot. That's like very similar to why Wraith Pact is super broken. So if you have Pugna and Wraith Pact in your team, and they're both out like around somebody, dude, that's insane. Like that guy's doing like no damage. It's kind of insane. So they nerfed it from basically 10, 15, 20, 25 to 8, 12, 16, 20. I kind of kept the top end range the same, but I just nerfed the early stages because I think one of the things that makes this hero strong is you can get 1 point in Nether Ward and it just is so good in lane. Like that 1 point just stops anybody from being able to harass you, and they take a bunch of damage, they do way less damage. So I just kind of decrease that, make this hero's laning stage a lot worse because it has no stun. This hero's like kind of weak in the lane in a lot of ways, and so just making that worse makes up for, I think, the later portion of the game where, you know, you are still pretty good in all the ways you're good with healing and with the ward and the damage reduction and the damage that you're doing to people when they cast stuff, which they also nerfed obviously here, and I kept that kind of the same. But now your laning stage is just way worse, and I think that definitely makes up for it, especially as a support. Maybe it's going to be more of a mid. In that case, it's more viable because the early game is not as punishing. When you do go mid and you get a lot of XP. So that's Pugna. I just don't think they went far enough nerfing Kato, Pugna, CK, these kinds of things. I just don't think they went far enough, so I kind of amped that up a little bit, made it a little bit worse for these heroes. The next one we're going to do or look at is Silencer. Basically, all we did is we just fixed this hero again. Strength growth was changed from 2.4 to 2.2, and I just said, don't do that. Like, you're buffing the hero already. Stop it. Stop changing this random, like, strength gain, strength growth, and, you know, the strength, like, starting strength by 1 or 2. Like, stop it. Just stop it. It's like, I don't know if you're memeing, but this is just kind of getting annoying at this point. Like, stop it. So that's Silencer. Just fixed it there. And the next one is one of my favorite heroes, Slark. So I think a lot of people are complaining about how they changed this hero. It just makes absolutely no sense. I think I said in the other patch that originally it was like 7 minutes. That was a little bit of an exaggeration. It was 4 minutes. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, basically Essence Shift, when they first came out with talents, and that 25 talent had the extra duration on Essence Shift, once you hit 25, you got Essence Shift stacks for 4 minutes. That was what it was. And originally when that came out, this was 5 years ago in 2017, when that came out, the level 4 of Essence Shift was 2 minutes. Now, with the level 25 talent and level 4 of Essence Shift, you have Essence Shift for 2 minutes and 10 seconds. So in 5 years, with all of the buffs that everybody gets in the strength creep, basically, with which everything gets stronger. It's kind of this idea that everything keeps getting stronger and stronger. Slark has had almost no significant buffs. He had a Glove of Haste buff, basically got a lot of attack speed one patch, and then when they came out with his different Agnum Scepter, where it was like the 2 pounces and they were pretty far, he was pretty good then. Those are the only 2 real buffs he's gotten, other than the Shard, but everyone got a Shard, so that doesn't really count. And that's in 5 years, and now his Essence Shift, which is the main thing that makes him good, has been nerfed into oblivion. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous. In the past, 5 years ago, level 4, you would get it for 2 minutes. Now, you have to hit level 25 to get it for 2 minutes. It's absolutely insane, completely ridiculous. I don't know what whoever's changing this just doesn't know what they're doing, straight up. Like, it just makes absolutely no sense. The extra 5 seconds in the early game and then 10 seconds level 2 is not enough to make up for that, because this hero already has a terrible laning stage against a lot of matchups. Doing this small, like, 1 average damage buff and the small 5 to 10 seconds increase of Essence Shift is not enough to make the hero better. Especially when later on in the game, 15 plus minutes, now you only have 80 seconds here. It just makes absolutely no sense. So anyway, that's my Slark rant. I know I probably did a little bit of that also in the last video, but regardless, I made it 20, 40, 80, 120, which I think is actually what it was, or close to what it was before. Actually, I think it was 15, 30, 60, 120, so they basically doubled it every time. Now I just made it buffed a little bit in the beginning, but I just made it 120 max. I think it should be 120. It makes no sense to me not to have it 2 minutes. 2 minutes is really not that long of a time. It just makes more sense. Now it's 80 seconds, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Like, you're going to fight, you're going to be able to take, like, maybe 1 tier 2 tower, and then you can't do anything. Like, you can barely take Roche off of this Essence Shift stack. Like, 80 seconds is absolutely nothing. It's ridiculous. So in any case, that's the Slark change. I decided to do it that way. I just don't think it really makes any sense. If anything, keep it the same, and then just buff the early levels. Like, it just makes no sense the way they did it here. So that's Slark. I'm going to move on, stop ranting about Slark. He's one of my favorite heroes, so it makes sense that I was mad there. The next one is Timbersaw. I'm going to change this a little bit as well, because I kind of ranted or got upset in the last patch as well when I was looking at this, that they changed the mechanical skill of timbersaw. So now that feel of how far the timber chain is, you can see they changed the max distance and cast range. It just makes absolutely no sense. Do not do that. I hate when they do that kind of stuff, because now you have to relearn as a timbersaw player, you know, how far you can cast it. It just makes it so annoying to play these heroes and to have to relearn these kind of mechanical things. So just decrease the damage. I just reduced the damage from 70, 120, 170, 220 to 50, 100, 150, 200. So just by 20, I think, on each level. I think I was going to change. I forgot to do this. It says base strength increased. I just was going to edit, and I just completely forgot to edit this to say not to increase the strength. Why are you increasing the base strength by 1? Stop it. Stop it. If anything, I think you should decrease the base strength. I actually was tempted to make the base strength decrease by like 4, from 24 to 20, to make the hero nerfed even more. But don't buff this and then nerf this. Stop doing that. Stop it. Bad. Bad Ice Frog. Bad random Valve employee. Stop it. So that's Timber. And then the last one that we're going to look at, actually, I was considering changing Ursa, like not buffing him as much, because he's going to be like the carry of the patch. Just watch. He's like going to be the carry. He's insane right now. I mean, he's already pretty good, and now he's just going to have an even better laning stage. His hero's going to be insane. But I actually like Ursa, and I play Ursa, so I didn't change that. So it's a little bit selfish, but hey, whatever. Warlock, I changed something fundamental with this hero. So basically, the way that they changed this hero previously was the max slow increased from, you know, for upheaval from 40, 60, 80, 100, whatever. I decided, don't even do that. Just make this ability no longer a channeling ability, and now the cast range, you just cast it on the ground right in front of you, and then you walk away. Just do that. I mean, there's really no point in having this be a channeling ability. This ability has been so bad for so long. You know, so many heroes have had changes. Just make this an ability where you cast it on the ground. That way this hero has some kind of stun or control that isn't just absolutely crappy, terrible dog shit. Like, just make Upheaval a ground cast ability where you can walk away. Stop it. I also forgot to change. I was going to change the Chaotic Offering. I was going to make the cast range increased. Like, why are you decreasing the cast range from 1200 to 1000? Like, just if anything, keep it to 1200, but increase it to 1400. Like, I don't know. This hero's terrible. Like, I understand maybe Herald pubs would get ruined because this hero's picked all the time you can solo carry with, but who really cares, honestly? Just make this hero better. It's not seen professional play in like a decade. So in any case, that's Warlock, and then I didn't really change anything. I was thinking about changing some stuff with Zeus maybe, or Witch Doctor, to make Zeus a little bit better, because I have had this idea of just adding the old ability, which is now the Shard, into Heavenly Jump. I think I mentioned this in the other video, but I have this idea of doing that, and I think that would actually make the hero better, and then make another Shard. But whatever, I didn't add this to this patch, because like I said in the earlier part of the video, I kind of want to keep this video and the idea of it within the realms of the patch itself, to see what I would have done, kind of how I would change it, how I would make it better. So in any case, that's the video, guys. Let me know what you think about all the changes and how I changed the patch, and whether you think those were better changes, whether you think that would be more reasonable. And maybe in the future patches and future videos, if it's a bigger patch, I'll do like bigger changes. But because this was just a D patch, and a lot of the things that they did update were more like, you know, Dota Plus updates and these kinds of things, I just didn't go crazy for this one. Plus, it's the first one that I did, just to see how it goes. And then in the future, maybe I'll get a little bit crazier with it and a little bit more detailed. Maybe, who knows, if I keep doing these and people like them, maybe in the future, once I get more subs and get a little bit more notoriety, Valve will just hire me to do the balance changes, because Ice Frog clearly doesn't care anymore or isn't doing it. So in any case, that is the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you like the idea, if you like my changes, you know, all those kinds of things. Like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things, like I always say. Join the Discord if you haven't already. Go to my Patreon to support me if you want to see more videos into the future, or if you want coaching, you can always go to my Patreon there as well. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.